Hello, it's Leontine from Little Lovely Crafts. Today I'm sharing two cards. They are lift flap sliders. I got the idea from Grace and I've put a link to the Fawn blog post she made about this in the description box down below. So if you want to check it out, you can click on it. I'm going to show you one basic card and I turned one card into a shaker. So I hope you like today's video. So you will need one panel cut with the large stitch rectangle stackables and one with the largest outside in stitched rectangle stackables. And then I just got the largest lift the flap die and I'm going to place it in the middle, tape it down and then run it through my die cut machine. But before I do that, I'm also attaching that little notch from the Let's Toast pull tab add-on set. I'm going to fold that flap piece over and go over it with my bone folder. And then I'm going to score the flap according to the measurements that Grace mentioned on the blog. When you score, you'll want to make sure that you're not going outside of that flap piece because those lines will show and it's not a look you'll want to go for. I've slowed down the video so you can see in what direction you need to fold. And then I'm going over those folds with my bone folder and then the flap piece is done. Next up, we're going to need another panel cut with the outside in stitched rectangle stackables and we're going to cut it off at 3 inches and a quarter. I'm going to round off the edges because as you can see it kind of shows behind my flap. Just make sure that you keep the stitched edge on the top of the card. I used this corner punch from Fawn Creative, but I actually ended up cutting it with my scissors a little bit more because I wasn't happy with the shape that it created. So for the first card, I had already stamped and colored the images I was going to use on the card, and I used some twine, some aqua twine, to go as strings of the balloons, and I attached them with glue and some glue dots as well. And to keep them standing up, I used some Lawn Fawn acetate. I also made a very slim puffy cloud border, and I also die cut some puffy clouds to go with the scene. I'm going to do some ink blending now and I'm taping that flap down because I don't want it to move around when I go over it with my blending brush. I'm using tumbled glass distress oxide ink and some peacock feathers around the edges. I'm going to repeat the process on that little outside in stitch rectangle that we cut and of course also on the large stitch rectangle stackable. I'm going around the edges of my clouds with a little bit of tumbled glass. I'm putting a piece of score tape on that bottom fold that we made on the flap and I'm going to attach that piece on top of it, and then I can put some foam tape all around the card and then I just have to attach it to that large stitch rectangle. Before I start decorating, I'm going to place it in my Stamp Easy and I'm going to stamp the sentiment Happy Birthday with some peacock ink from Fawn. And because I'm placing the card at the top of my Stamp Easy, that flap isn't in the way and I can easily stamp my sentiment. And now I can start decorating it. I'm gluing on that little arrow from the Let's Toast Pull Tab add-on set, and I'm making sure that whatever I'm placing on my flap, I'm only gluing halfway, because you want it to come up and you don't want it stuck on the entire flap, because then your whole element doesn't work. After I finished this card, I got the idea for the second card, and I'm going to show you all the steps that you'll need to know to make this card as well. I'm going to make a rainbow background using only 3 colors of Distress ink, and that's Picked Raspberry, Mustard Seed and Peacock Feathers. I tried it with Distress Oxide ink as well, but I thought the colors of the Distress ink were more vibrant after a few hours, so I decided to go with the Distress ink panel. I was having a little trouble blending the colors with my blending brushes, so I decided to grab my sponges and try fix the mistakes a little bit. And after putting on a lot of ink, I finally got it the way I wanted it to look. And here you can see the difference between Distress Oxide and Distress ink. The Oxide is on the left and the Distress ink is on the right. And I think you can see why I went with the one on the right. And because the front of the card has such a contrasting color to the back panel, you can see why I snipped off a little more of my flap. So just like before, I put some foam tape around the entire panel, well, the back side of the panel, and then I'm going to put a piece of acetate on top of it. And for the shaker element, I'm placing foam tape on my rainbow panel, and then I'm going to fill it up with some polymer clay stars. And next I'm going to carefully attach my front panel on top of it. So it's going to be a lot of foam tape on top of each other, but it was the only way I could think of that I could get the shaker element and the pull tab effect to work. So here you see me attaching the acetate, and I'm using my bone folder to really press it down into the tape so I'm sure that it stays in place. And I'm doing that for all sides of the foam tape because I do not want it to be a little bit loose and then having some of the stars fall out or something. Some of those stars were really thick, so I got them out of there and replaced them with a few thinner ones. Next up are my stamps. I'm going to use unicorns because of course with rainbows there should be unicorns on the card, and the one I have right here has a cloud underneath him, and I've used the reveal wheel die to cut him out because then it also cuts out a little bit of that cloud because I want him sitting on one of my puffy cloud borders. So this way it makes it a lot easier to cut him out. And I'm just coloring over those black ink lines with my white gel pen. And I decided to cut off his tail as well because then I can just play around with its placement. To make sure my flap doesn't get caught on the cloud with the unicorn on top of it, I'm placing some foam squares on top of the panel to lift it up a little bit. I attached all of the clouds on my card, and now I'm going to do some coloring with my Copic Sketch Markers. I'm only going to show you one unicorn because the process is the same, I just alternated between the colors on the mains a little bit. Just seeing those unicorns on top of my rainbow and the whole blue panel with the clouds, I just really love it. I'm going to attach them with some liquid glue, and then I'm going to decide what I'm going to do as a sentiment on this card. I cut some Lawn Fawn vellum with the largest everyday sentiment banners, and I'm going to stamp the sentiment Life's Magical with You. The Lives and With You are from the Crazy Antics set, and Magical is of course from Unicorn Picnic itself. I had to carefully stamp lives because there's also a behind it, and I don't want that word because it doesn't make any sense with my sentiment. To make sure I didn't accidentally stamp it, I placed a little bit of my purple painter's tape over it and took it off once I had the ink on the stamp. Of course, I waited until the first part of my sentiment was dry because I didn't want it smudging. Because you can easily see glue through vellum, I'm going to use my Xyron sticker maker, and I've set the sentiment aside a little bit to dry, and then I ran it through and I can just stick my sentiment on like a sticker. Now all there is left to do is attach it to a card base, and then my 2 cards are all finished. I had a lot of fun creating them, even though it took a while to finish them because I had to film for my classes again. But anyway, I love how they turned out, and I hope you enjoyed watching it. Give my video a thumbs up if you did, and I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel. Stay safe, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!